There are moments in life that divide everything into before and after. The day our twins were born was one of those moments, a whirlwind of emotions, where time seemed to collapse into something both chaotic and sacred. Nothing could have prepared us for the intensity, the fear, the overwhelming love that would crash over us in waves. It wasn't the peaceful, picture-perfect birth we had imagined. It was louder, messier, more grand, somehow more beautiful. This is not just a story about childbirth, it's about transformation. It's about surrendering control when everything feels uncertain. And most of all, it's about the kind of love that arrives all at once, multiplied by 2. Welcome to this deeply emotional journey into one of the most powerful days of our lives, the birth of our twins. If you've ever wondered what it truly feels like when life changes in a single moment, this story will take you there. From anticipation to fear, from exhaustion to overwhelming joy, every second carried a weight we will never forget. This is more than a memory, it's an experience that reshaped who we are forever. Before we begin, take a moment to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with someone who believes in the beauty of real-life stories. Your support helps us continue sharing moments that matter, moments that connect us all on a deeper human level. The day began with a strange stillness, the kind that feels almost intentional, as if the world itself were holding its breath in anticipation of something monumental. There was no dramatic rush at first, no immediate panic or urgency, just a quiet awareness that something had shifted. The air felt heavier, charged with a sense of inevitability, and even the smallest sound seemed amplified in that silence. Every movement carried meaning. Every glance exchanged held unspoken understanding. It was the kind of morning that doesn't announce itself loudly but instead whispers that nothing will ever be the same again. Deep down, there was a knowing that this was the beginning of an irreversible transformation, one that would unfold in ways impossible to predict. As the hours passed, that quiet stillness slowly gave way to a rising tension, like a storm gathering strength beyond the horizon. The body began to speak in undeniable ways, sending signals that could no longer be ignored or postponed. There was a rhythm forming, something primal and ancient, as if the experience itself was guided by forces far older than human comprehension. Each sensation carried both anticipation and fear, blending into an emotional intensity that was impossible to separate. The reality of what was about to happen began to settle in, not as a clear thought, but as a feeling that grew heavier with every passing minute. It was no longer about preparation, it was about surrender. The journey to the hospital felt surreal, as though time had been stretched and compressed all at once. The outside world continued as usual, cars moving, people walking, life unfolding in ordinary ways, yet inside, everything felt extraordinary and suspended. There was a strange contrast between the normalcy of the surroundings and the magnitude of what was happening internally. Every second carried weight. Every breath felt deliberate. Thoughts raced, then disappeared, replaced by a singular focus on what lay ahead. It was a transition not just in location, but in identity, moving from who we were into who we were about to become. Upon arrival, the environment shifted into something both clinical and intensely emotional. Bright lights, unfamiliar sounds, and the presence of professionals created a space that felt both safe and overwhelming. There was comfort in knowing that help was there, yet also a vulnerability in realizing how little control remained. The process began to take on a life of its own, unfolding step by step with a pace that could not be dictated or slowed. Each moment demanded attention, each sensation required presence. It became clear that this was not an experience to be managed, but one to be lived fully, no matter how intense it became. As the labor progressed, the intensity deepened into something almost indescribable. It was not just physical, it was emotional, mental, and deeply spiritual all at once. Waves of sensation came and went, each one stronger than the last, each one demanding complete surrender. There was a constant negotiation between strength and vulnerability, between holding on and letting go. Time began to lose its meaning, dissolving into a series of moments that existed only in the present. There was no past, no future, only the immediacy of what was happening right then and there. In the midst of that intensity, there were flashes of connection that felt profoundly grounding. a touch, a glance, a silent presence that said more than words ever could. These moments became anchors, small islands of calm in an otherwise turbulent sea. They reminded us that we were not alone, that even in the chaos, there was a shared experience unfolding. It was a kind of connection that transcended language, rooted in something deeper and more instinctive. In those fleeting seconds, everything felt both fragile and incredibly strong at the same time. The realization that there were two lives about to enter the world added an entirely new layer to the experience. It wasn't just about one moment, one arrival, but two separate journeys converging into a single, overwhelming reality. The mind struggled to fully grasp it, to comprehend the magnitude of what was about to happen. There was excitement, yes, but also a sense of responsibility so vast it felt almost impossible to hold. The idea of becoming a parent is transformative on its own, but multiplied, it became something even more profound. As the process continued, exhaustion began to settle in, wrapping itself around every thought and movement. It was a deep, bone-level fatigue that made even the simplest actions feel monumental. Yet, alongside that exhaustion, there was an undeniable determination, a strength that seemed to come from somewhere beyond the self. It was as if the body and mind had tapped into a reserve that existed solely for this moment. Every ounce of energy was directed toward one purpose, one goal that overshadowed everything else. There were moments when doubt crept in, quiet but persistent, questioning whether it was possible to continue. These thoughts didn't last long, but their presence was undeniable. They added to the complexity of the experience, reminding us that strength is not the absence of doubt, but the ability to move forward despite it. Each time doubt appeared, it was met with an equally powerful resolve, a determination to see the journey through to its end. It was a constant balancing act between fear and courage. Then came the moments when everything intensified beyond anything that had come before. The body reached its limits, pushing into a space that felt both overwhelming and transformative. It was no longer just an experience. It became a passage, a crossing from one state of being into another. Every sensation, every emotion peaked simultaneously, creating a crescendo that felt almost impossible to sustain. And yet, it continued, carrying everything forward with an unstoppable momentum. The first arrival brought with it an explosion of emotion that defied explanation. It was relief, joy, disbelief, and love all at once, crashing together in a way that felt almost too big to contain. The sound, the presence, the undeniable reality of new life entering the world shifted everything instantly. It was a moment that existed outside of time, suspended in a space where nothing else mattered. And just as that realization began to settle, there was the awareness that the journey was not yet complete. The second arrival carried its own unique intensity, a continuation of the same story, yet entirely its own moment. It brought a renewed wave of emotion, equally powerful, equally overwhelming. There was a sense of completion that began to take shape, a feeling that something extraordinary had just unfolded. The realization that both lives had safely entered the world created a release of tension so profound it felt almost physical. It was as if the entire experience had been building toward this exact point. In the aftermath, everything felt different, quieter, yet infinitely fuller. The chaos that had defined the previous hours gave way to a kind of stillness that felt earned and deeply meaningful. There was a need to process, to understand, to simply exist in the presence of what had just happened. Every detail, every sensation lingered, creating a tapestry of memory that would never fade. It was a moment of transition, from intensity into reflection. Holding both lives, even in the simplest sense, created a connection that felt immediate and unbreakable. It was not something that needed to grow or develop. It was simply there, fully formed and undeniable. The weight of that connection carried both joy and responsibility, a duality that would continue to evolve over time. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one that would redefine everything that came after. The emotional impact of the experience began to settle in layers, revealing itself gradually rather than all at once. There was gratitude, immense and overwhelming, mixed with a sense of disbelief that something so powerful had just occurred. It was a reminder of the fragility and strength of life, existing side by side in a way that felt both humbling and inspiring. The experience lingered, not as something that was over, but as something that would continue to shape every moment moving forward. Looking back, the day felt both distant and incredibly present at the same time. It existed as a memory, yet also as a defining part of identity, something that could never be separated from who we had become. It was a story that would be told and retold, not because it needed to be remembered, but because it deserved to be honored. It was a testament to the complexity of life, the beauty of chaos, and the power of love in its purest form. Some moments in life cannot be fully explained, they can only be felt. The day the twins were born was not just about bringing new life into the world, but about discovering a new depth of love, strength, and resilience within ourselves. It showed us that even in chaos, there is beauty, and even in fear, there is courage waiting to rise. Life doesn't always unfold the way we imagine, but sometimes, in its most unpredictable moments, it gives us something far greater than we ever expected. And in the end, it's those moments, the raw, imperfect, overwhelming ones, that shape us into who we are meant to become.